Okay. So the first piece of news is there was a scheduled meeting for the ESO stream team. For those of you who don't know, the ESO stream team is comprised of, I think, around 70 ESO content creators and Twitch streamers, primarily, that main ESO, including myself. What was unique about this meeting is that it was in voice chat, in voice call. And I don't recall something of this scale being called for in the team by ZOS, and I'm going to lay down some ground concepts and context for this meeting so people don't go fucking crazy. This wasn't a meeting about us giving feedback so that they can immediately do it right there on the spot, or like give us promises straight up saying, yeah, we'll do what you guys think we should do. The meeting was primarily about talking and going over some big concept points in regards to the game direction, the state of the game. And I'll talk a lot about that as well. I won't. There are also, of course, some other discussions I'm not touched because they're not related to the game. But yeah. So, and of course, we were asked to think about the answers we would give, think about the information we would give.
Nepis
oh my god, I forgot.
Is a liar, a bully.
It's perfect timing.
And he's toxic.
So yeah, and then, you know, some of us, I think, also collected feedback for some of these questions and areas of inquiry from people. I personally collected some stuff from my guild, my officers, people who quit ESO, people who are still playing ESO, people who are on the verge of quitting ESO, and a couple people who are relatively new to ESO. Just so that there's a nice, sample, diverse pool. And honestly, despite the diversity in the people I've asked, the pool of people I've asked,
No, I didn't forget. Nephis, yo bitch ass, you're next.
I saw literally the same things over and over. So this was in effect me speaking for what I would say is our community, including people who've already moved on from ESO. I will say that I would say the meeting was productive in the sense that they were very receptive, and it was primarily not like all the devs were there, not all the combat devs or anything, but it was primarily the community management and also like some other departments that were just there to take notes and listen to us, listen to our communities, because I wasn't the only one there. They were very receptive, and I think they have a, going back to the whole survey thing that we saw, and going back to what I talked about in my State of ESO video in terms of content viewership, I think they're at this point more than aware of the problems facing ESO, especially in the content space. And so they asked us, what are the pain points? What's that, you know, all of it. And of course, you know, even if it felt like we were repeating ourselves, they were very receptive, I would say. And hopefully something comes out of it. So I'm going to go over what I submitted as feedback. And directly to them, like in voice. Nothing held back. Just straight up blunt. No sugarcoating, really. Yeah, I think it's important that there was not much. I think it was important that we addressed a lot of problems and a lot of pain points. And I think all the stream team members, for the most part, were on the same page. It didn't matter what kind of streamer was there. Fun fact, even the people who don't stream PvP and stuff, they were also like, yeah, PvP needs love. So I think everybody's on the same page at this point. I think everyone's also suffered from losing metrics and losing revenue. So we're all on the same page, which is good. And I think it was very important for us to talk to them in a amiable and also productive manner without too much outside noise. Regardless of what you think about the current level of communication between the wider player base and the developers, one can't deny it's a bit too tense right now, and there is a lot of noise on the periphery. And I'm hoping that this meeting and future meetings, if any, will provide a segue into a communication, what was that, way between the bigger population, the wider demographic, and the devs directly. Eventually, hopefully. You know, that's the ultimate goal here. So yeah, let's go over some things I kind of forwarded. They asked if there were any, and this is them worrying about retention rate, this is them worrying about, new players, if there were any repeated areas of confusion. And I said the unfinished hybridization in combat has definitely produced more confusion than it has resolved confusion. There are still some esoteric numbers and stuff in the game that you don't really know from what the game tells you, unless you go to like Skinny Cheeks or some other person on YouTube and figure out what these numbers mean. So for example, I gave the example of, Major Prophecy and Major Savagery increases your critical rating by 2,629. What does that mean? How does that 2,629 translate into the universal percentage? Is that 5% weapon crit? Is that 2%? I don't know, right? And of course, the hybridization being a little unfinished, very unfinished, confuses people. Like, do I go stam? Do I go mag enchants? Do I go 64 points to stam? Whatever. Which spell do I use? Spell damage? Do I use physical damage enchantments? Which potions do I use now? What skills? With what armor? Am I light armor? Am I magicka? All that confusion. I think that's a big pain point I brought forth from our community. The next pain points I brought forth was, or not pain points, like confusing areas was what, most players don't know what light attack weaving is, animation canceling, what is that? And players are confused, at least from what I've seen in my YouTube comments and elsewhere. How do you know what ability is affected by what champion point? Why aren't there any in-game tutorials? Why is the in-game skills advisor so bad and outdated, or contrary to what people recommend? And of course, what's the point of progressing through CP1 or CP10 to CP159? Stuff like that. The next area I want to talk about that we covered too was they straight up asked us, and I think this is a good thing, a very good thing, and I'll say I kind of felt bad because it was like I had a long ass list. But they asked us, and this is a good thing, right? They asked us, compared to other games, where do you feel ESO struggles? And I was like, the list came out. So just to keep it brief here, and I'll kind of go over each point too, that I couldn't go in depth because other people had to talk too during the meeting. And I'll explain basically what I touched on. So my first point was proper reward structure. I brought up the fact that, and I'm sure others will too, that ESO's reward system is non-existent. This has been a huge pain point for us for at least several years, right? Compared to other games like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft. They have hundreds and hundreds of mounts or cosmetics that you can earn in-game, while in ESO there's, not even 20 mounts you can get in-game without using money. I stress this point very much because throughout the conversation, other people brought up their own kind of issues with the game, or their community's issue with the game. And to me, all those kind of issues could be solved by a reward system. So like the reward system would be the ultimate linchpin for a lot of these things, in my opinion. But anyway, the next kind of thing I brought up compared to other games that ESO really is bad at is like there's no meaningful economic impact for players in doing their favorite activities, especially for PvPers or even raiders. Like, I think ESO is one of the very few games I've played where your preferred activity, like raiding, you lose your wealth, you lose your gold, rather than attaining more of it. And this further contributes to a severe lack of interaction, I feel like, between players in an already isolated environment. So, like, for example, why are you doing antiquities if you can't even sell your treasures to other players? Why raid with newer players at all if all you get is being broke? And maybe, like, half the fucking team quits anyway, right? And you know, I kept going. At this point, I think I was the only one talking. And I apologize, but I kept talking. I'm like, okay, here's the next thing that ESO is not good at right now compared to other MMOs or games. You know, ESO has a very uncertain future as an MMO. And what I meant by this was, during the meeting, like, in a live service game, you want people to invest their time and have their time acknowledged that they invested into the game. They don't want to feel like they wasted their time putting their time and effort, money, your soul into the game. I think a lot of people are looking at ESO in the context of, you know, the lack of commercials for ESO or ads compared to other games, the lack of ESO's presence at the Game Awards, the existence of Project Kestrel. A lot of people are speculating that ESO is just a cash cow that funnels all the funding to the new project instead of focusing on itself. The wild changes in combat immediately following the shutdown of Class Rep program was not good as well for the perception of the game. And I brought this up quite a bit. The aggressive Crownster monetization of what should be in-game rewards, coupled with a virtually mandatory subscription fee, and it's kind of a noticeable cold attitude to the older player base in favor of a cyclical one, makes ESO look like something that you shouldn't take seriously in the MMO space. I mean, there's a reason why the biggest content creators don't even talk about ESO. I mean, you know what I mean? And I also brought up in what I also forwarded in written form that patch notes in ESO tend to make people more anxious, upset, or nervous than hyped or excited, which I think if that's the, I don't know, I don't think that should be what a patch notes do. What patch notes should do. I think patch notes shouldn't be like that. I feel like, in essence, patch notes should be getting people excited or looking forward to something, or get them to anticipate something in the future, rather than have them get really nervous or anxious. It's like, it's just kind of go back to the drawing board on that one. Right. I also brought up the lack of, you know, I wasn't the only one. I also brought up basic combat tutorials. The lack of basic combat tutorials, and we actually talked a good amount on this, and I think it got through. And again, there's no promises, but I think it got through, and I think they're gonna. It seems to me they took a lot away from this meeting. It seems to me that they will probably come up with ideas. They actually already came up with ideas during the meeting, I think, is what I got the sense from. But yeah, the next point was, like, you know, the perception of player feedback not being important, and that kind of ties in with inconsistent communication. And because I said inconsistent, because there are really good moments with the ESO communications team, community team, where they do communicate, and me and the other streamers and everybody else on Twitter or whoever, we always like applaud that. But then those are good moments. You don't want to just have good moments. You want to have continuously good, consistent communication. And that's what I really stress, because, and we'll get into that too, because they actually asked us to talk to them about how they could improve in communicating and stuff like that, at least to us as players. And of course I brought up that, you know, the story and lore content has been rather stagnant, and this wasn't just me. I also brought up, and we talked about this a bit as well at the meeting, content accessibility. I brought up the fact that a lot of the content, due to the, and I also brought up the the lack of learning curve, or lack of a good learning curve, that a lot of the content is not very accessible. And I think, and I stressed this a lot during the meeting, that if you're worried about a potential backlash from the endgame community, for example, they nerf the hard mode of Dreadsail Reef, or the hard mode of whatever, or Trifecta Achievement, whatever, we would not be upset. I told him that straight up. I'm like, if any endgame player is upset that you nerf VHoff or fucking Rock Groove a year or two or whatever after the fact, it's like nonsensical. I think all endgame raiders, especially from discussions in Council Raiders, might I add, are okay with the game not being balanced around them. I think it's a terrible mistake to balance around the top end players, especially for content. I strongly don't believe we should be looking at the top players and be like, okay, let's make it hard enough for them. We should be looking at everybody else, because ultimately at the end of the day, most raiders want people to get into raiding, not be cock-blocked, right, by some more barriers of entry. Right? So I brought up that too, and I think that got through too, which I'm glad, you know. And I also brought up that, you know, I think the mood during the meeting was like, oh man, Neff is, you know what I mean? But I kept going, all right, because I felt like this is it. You know, we gotta have our voices heard. And I said, you know, in addition to the lack of a good learning curve, like the devs, at least to us, seem like they don't focus on existing systems. So they like abandon the existing systems in order to focus on the next in-game system that they'll abandon eventually for the next one, for the next year. And I brought that up. You know, I brought up the fact that they could do so much more for the guild system, the dungeon trial system, like leaderboards, PvP battlegrounds, formatting, companions. I brought all that up, and I brought up that some people don't feel like there is actual diversity amongst the classes anymore, or that there aren't enough classes compared to other games. And then I also brought up more stuff. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, or if I look like if it looks like I'm rambling, but I actually talked a lot. I kind of felt bad, but during the meeting, and I said that the daily rewards system, or that there's like no good daily login rewards or compensation, or good compensation for players. Did I bring up racial passives? No. So okay, I don't know if you were here earlier when I was going over the context of the meeting. This meeting is not about the finer details of stuff, like, oh, Templar is dog shit, or oh man, you should, I don't know, make that motif available sooner. No, this meeting is about the overall big picture, big concepts. Just think big picture shit, you know, broad topics. Because if we had to go into like small specific details, we'd be in that fucking voice chat right now. Okay, I wouldn't be here if we talked for a long time, longer than what was expected, which is a good sign. So, let me keep going. So I brought up the fact that there's a lack of good daily login rewards. I brought up the fact that, even Dead by Daylight had better or more generous login rewards for the month of December. I brought up the fact that, people play that over ESO because of that. I brought up the fact that Genshin Impact, Lost Ark, Final Fantasy XIV, Warframe even, and other games have really good ways to compensate players for stuff like, bugs, downtime, whatever, while also giving good daily login rewards. Like, for example, Warframe, which is a free-to-play game, by the way, offers cash shop discounts up to 75% sometimes as part of its login rewards. I haven't brought up MLB, okay? It's a sports game, baseball. Even that has better login rewards than ESO, alright? People talk about their diamond bats, and that makes them log into MLB and fucking play the game with their diamond bats. So I brought that up too. And lastly, I brought up, in comparison to other games and MMOs, ESO has a really bad track record in terms of response time to bug fixes. I emphasize the fact that, hey, no matter who we are, whether we're a gamer, a regular casual gamer, a streamer, a hardcore raider, whatever, we understand that there will always be bugs in a live service game. That's reality, that's facts. But I emphasized as well what kind of bugs and how long it takes to respond to those bugs is what a lot of us look at. Like Block, for example. That should not have gone on as long as it has. Right? Do I care about, in comparison, a bug that affects NPC speech dialogue? No, not really. It's still a bug, but it's acceptable to a degree compared to like other bugs that are potentially game breaking or really detrimental to your gameplay. So that pretty much summarizes all that stuff I brought up to them, during the meeting for the comparison to other games. And other people also gave their input, and it was basically everybody's on the same page again. They were very receptive. There were other topics too that kind of showed me that they are willing to listen. And I say this time and time again, like there's no way they don't know the content space is in a really bad spot right now for ESO. There's no way they don't know that they're losing players, at least the older player base. And there's no way they don't know, judging from the questions they were asking us, that their retention rate is awful for newer players. So they know. And I think the first step to solving issues is like acknowledging that there are issues, which I feel like rarely happens at times in ESO, right? But anyway, I'm going to talk about the next stuff that we were asked about or talked about, and it's in regards to communication. This is a bit of a weird area for me because I hate it when players keep clamoring. Like, personally, I don't like when players keep clamoring, oh, we want more communication, we want more communication. And it's like, bro, what exactly do you want them to communicate? How do you want them to communicate? And I basically told them how I feel like they could or should communicate. I told them, hey, instead of me going through forum threads to look for a developer answer, maybe make dedicated announcements directly from the source. And there shouldn't be a reason why some of us have to hunt for obscure interviews with game developers from ZOS to find out how the game works or what the game is, where the game is going. It should be coming directly from the source, is what I emphasized. Because, if you watch my YouTube videos where I do cover those interviews, the knowledge that the older generation console is holding back ESO's development for, newer shit came from a interview, not with the community, but with a gaming website. It's like, why not just tell us, right? I also said that, I also straight up said to them that, fuck it, just be blunt, be transparent and direct. And by that I mean, like, even if it's telling us things aren't working out, even if it's telling us that, hey, our progress in this area is fucked at the moment, just tell us. Because when I looked at Matt Fearer's post talking about how it was difficult for them to get the server hardware due to the actual effect COVID had on the global chain supply, right? I understood that. I mean, if you're a rational human being, you understand that. And you can defend it. And you can, like, understand why things are not happening the way they are. Is that good news that people are gonna get their server hardware late? No. But I still appreciate that they said, yeah, it's fucked right now. Here's the ETA. I'm okay with that. And I think some other people brought up I also brought this up too, in a way, like, over moderating people. I understand that there are fucking nutcases in this game and on the forums and wherever else, right? That there are people who are always gonna say negative shift no matter what, that they're gonna, like, pick apart everything no matter what. But then, as a result of that, if you over moderate everybody else on account of those people, that's just gonna alienate them. So, for example, when you're banning people for mentioning PvP or performance in a chapter promotion stream, that's a little bit eyebrow raising, and it also just alienates people and gives ammunition against the game. So I mentioned a lot of that. I also told them, why don't you look at how other developers communicate with their player bases? Because ZOS is not the only one that has to deal with, a lot of negative trolls and really bad shit, And when I look at when I look at how other game developers interact with their player base, I mention, why not, I don't know, like, just be out there, have fun, make memes with them or something, anything. I mean, I also brought up that, Bungie, I don't even play Destiny 2. And I see a lot of it on Twitter, but Bungie's community team is so goddamn blunt, and that and the willingness they take to talk about how they develop their game and the struggles of game development, I feel like led to most of their player base are, like, respecting them. Whereas ESO or ZOS, it's like, well, once a torrent of critique comes their way, it feels like they just shut down. And I understand wanting to turtle up and go under the blanket and just kind of shut off the world. I get that. I'm on the fucking front lines of the shit on YouTube or whatever, right? I don't think that's justification for shutting down everything with everybody else. It just doesn't work. I get it, and I feel like if the rational parts of the community got enough, they would also help shut down the irrational parts of the community. And this is a long-term thing. But anyway, I went over some other stuff. Like, I brought up the fact that maybe they could do in-game surveys, in-game polls, if that's even possible. I also, and this might be really unpopular with some of you watching, but I also straight up told them that I do not think they should do standalone Q&As. They should not do combat previews. In this case, I don't think more communication is good communication. I think standalone Q&As, like what they promised for Update 35, is just a way for players to be more angry. I think it's a conduit of... I think some players do want to get pissed Obviously, a lot more players want answers, but I don't think you'll get... That's the point. I don't think you'll get answers or satisfying answers from a simple Q&A. And I told them straight up, and I emphasized this part as well. I emphasized a lot of things, but I think this got through too to them, judging from the mood of the meeting, which was for the most part positive and receptive. I said that if you're going to do Q&As, have them complement, like a side dish, right? Like, they shouldn't be the main thing. They should come after the main dish, right? So, for example, I feel like them just saying, here's our roadmap, or here's our vision, or here's our direction, and what we're gonna do, like a one-way statement, followed by a Q&A, is far better than them just saying, hey, here's a Q&A, where you will not be satisfied, and we certainly won't be satisfied, but here we go. You know what I mean? And combat previews, I don't find the combat previews at all meaningful. Because, for example, combat previews come 2 or 3 days before the live patch note, or, sorry, the PTS patch notes. And even if you have feedback for them based on what you can glean from the combat preview, they won't take that feedback because it's not the PTS patch notes. And I feel like having such vague combat previews only feed into this fucking frenzy of people guessing and speculating and being, you know, like, all this building up and being pent up, and by the time the PTS patch notes comes out, it's a fucking shit show. I don't think standalone Q&As and vague combat previews are healthy. I don't think they're actually communication. I think they're just conduits for people's emotions. And that's what I told them. And you know, there's like this forum thread on the forums that's like 22 pages long at this point, right? Where I think people are still asking for the fucking update 35 Q&A, and I look at that shit, I'm like, I would not, I don't want it, you know, I just don't want it, I don't know, it's just weird, it's just weird, and I wouldn't blame them if they said, you know what, we're not going to do the Q&A, but if they say they're not going to do the Q&A, they should come out with something better or more logical, like, here's our direction, here's our vision, here's maybe a roadmap, here's maybe what we see, and then engage with people. I brought up engagement a lot, you know, don't just engage with people, I don't know, like, just the stream team members, but also, like, other people, like, their communities too, like, you make people feel that they're part of something big, they can be proud of it, you know, and that's really it for the most part, in terms of what they wanted to hear about communication, or how they could improve communication with the player base or communities, and also, like, what areas does ESO struggle in. There were some other topics that we talked about that I don't think is really relevant to the larger discussion at hand. Like, for example, we talked about, you know, what keeps us coming back to the game, and literally everybody's answer was the fucking same, and I was happy, because it's like, well, it still shows that, you know, the values and the communal values, at least, are still there. Like, our answers for the most part were combat and friends. Those are like the 2 top answers everybody gave. Combat and community, and that's a really good thing. That's a really good foundation to work off of. It's still there. Is it diminished? Yeah, it's absolutely goddamn diminished. But and I said, like, if you can have a really bad ripple effect from update 35 and update 36, since more and more people are connected than ever before, you can have a really good positive ripple effect with a few more patches that are really good. It's not like it's the end of the world, or it's not like ESO is doomed. You can swap it around. So there's some hope, and I think the meeting itself gave hope as well. Obviously, again, as I said about the context of the meeting, it's not one and done. It's not like, okay, we're gonna do everything you do or you say. So for those of you watching or listening, don't expect all the treasures of the world from this one meeting. I think one of the last things we talked about was a meaningful reward. Sorry, not meaningful reward. They asked us what the one, if you could add one feature to ESO, what would it be? If you could add one feature to ESO, what would it be? And I'm glad they asked this question, because I think it revealed more pain points that they can work on, right? Because everybody had, not everybody, but like most of us had different answers. And it all ties in with different areas of the game that also interact with one another. That goes back to the areas and topics we talked about just now. My answer was a meaningful reward structure with cool stuff for every level of player, coupled with systems that address the difficulty scaling in this game, and ones that increase the longevity of content, like dungeon leaderboards and shit like that, right? I didn't say shit like that. But that's basically it. That's the one thing I wanted, and I answered it like that. Some other people said easier ways to manage in-game guilds. You know, I feel like without Discord or spreadsheets or something like that, I feel like guild management in ESO would be like, and I understand where they're coming from too. Like, oh my god, I can't fucking. Can you imagine? And Gina responded this is what? No, Gina was very kind as usual. She was very receptive and understanding. Turns out she also has been watching our videos, not mine only, but also probably also other people's videos. So she understands what's going on, and I think the other people at ZOS understands what's going on. And now it's kind of like, okay, here are our grievances. Here we are speaking for our communities, and we hope for the best. That's basically it. And I think it's a nice indication, because I don't think anything has happened like this before with the stream team. And this is like coming after the fact that with Matt Furier's studio director letter, where they're literally changing up their cadence, and they don't even know what they're doing for Q4 because they changed it up last minute, essentially. I think it's a very good sign that they are willing to compromise and also listen to the players. So this is a piece of good news. I'm sure there's people out there that are like, you're so fucking naive, or like, oh, you know, you're just on copium or opium and nothing's gonna change. It's all just talking. And to an extent, I don't blame you. Your feelings are valid. And all I'm saying is that just give it a chance, or not, and just wait and see what happens. That's really it. Just see what happens. If they're talking the talk, let them walk the walk. If they can't, well, whatever. If they do, whatever. That's pretty much it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about this, let me know, and we'll have our own little Q&A session. But that's pretty much all that was talked about, or all that was requested, at least for me. It was, I don't know how long I've been talking for, but yeah, it was a lot. It was a long meeting. It was a long meeting. You just want to see people get some love. I don't know if you were here for the beginning of this video or recording, or my tirade murder, but I think that also got through to them, because people, the streamers who were there that are not PvPers, that don't really PvP, that don't really engage with PvP, all of them also said PvP needs love. That's a good sign. I think that's a pretty good indication of community feedback, where when other parts of the community that are not PvPers are still speaking up for PvP and PvPers. And I'm sharing this with you guys because at the end of the meeting, I was like, So what can we share? Because like, and Gina was very gracious and kind to say, yeah, you can just share that there was a meeting and what we talked about, what you talked about, and yeah, I figured I'd let you guys know because I think a lot of people want the communication, or some sort of indication that they are being listened to, and I can assure you, a lot of different people's perspectives were represented there at the meeting. And I do hope that they utilize this channel of communication in the future and use it as a way for them to maybe breach into the larger sphere of players when they are ready and able. Because let me tell you, as a former class rep, there are a lot of ideas. There's a lot of noise out there that, oh my, like, I don't know how to describe this to you, but the workload in just looking through shit like that was a lot for me, and you need some way to kind of funnel the critical information, I feel like, especially if you're also a company and trying to pinpoint priorities, if that makes sense. But yeah, again, I think it's a good step in the right direction. Any other questions? Did anyone else bring up anything that you thought was a good point that you didn't bring up yourself? Yeah. Everything I just talked about, no one disagreed. Everything I just talked about, some people after the meeting were like, yeah, thanks for talking about that. Everything I just talked about were already things that other people were going to talk about. So it's like, it's good. It was good to see everyone was on the same page, on the content creator end, and also on the dev end, in terms of community and stuff. Hot tub time now? No. Did I disagree with someone else's idea? No. I could totally see, maybe it's because I had some practice with it as a class rep, but I could totally see where people were coming from with their ideas and takes and perspectives, because it all relates to our pain points, perspectives, and takes, and it's all it's all valid. You know, this was a good meeting. And I think it opened up goodwill, hopefully, and future receptiveness. And, you know, I did feel bad at several points when I was going down my list. It felt like... but at the same time, it just felt like I had to say it. You know, when they were like, what? In what areas do you feel like ESO is struggling compared to other games? I was like, all right, give me the mic. But it needed to be said, and I think a lot of it got through, which is I think great. I also already see some comments in Twitch chat that I talked about earlier in regards to, like, that kind of stuff shuts down communication for the rest of us. So I don't know if you were here for the entire thing, but that does shut down communication for the rest of us. And I can see why, but I guess keep doing the same thing and expect a different result and see what happens, I guess.